Take off the coat, Officer Ryan Mercer ordered, even though the scanner had already cleared her. Dr. Naomi Carter stood beneath the hard white lights of Terminal C, one hand resting on the handle of a worn leather briefcase, the other hanging calmly at her side. Around her, suitcase wheels whispered across polished tile, boarding announcements drifted from overhead speakers, and dozens of travelers moved past without knowing that 3 men in ordinary jackets had just stopped walking at the exact same time. Mercer pointed toward the inspection table. "You heard me." Naomi looked at the green light glowing above the scanner, then back at him. "The machine cleared me, officer." His mouth curved into a humorless smile. "Machines miss things." He said it loudly enough for the nearby passengers to hear. A few people slowed down. One woman pulled her phone from her purse. Naomi felt the familiar pressure of being watched before anyone had decided what they were seeing. She wore a navy coat, flat black shoes, and no jewelry except her father's old watch. Nothing about her suggested wealth or influence. That was exactly how she preferred to travel. Mercer's eyes moved from her face to the faded edges of her briefcase. People who belong in this lane usually understand instructions. The words were quiet, but their meaning was not. Naomi's jaw tightened for half a second. Then she glanced toward a coffee stand 30 feet away. A broad-shouldered man holding a newspaper touched 2 fingers to his earpiece. Near gate 17, a woman in a gray sweater lowered her rolling bag and shifted closer. By the windows, another man turned his body just enough to keep Mercer in view. Naomi gave them the smallest shake of her head. "Not yet." Mercer noticed the movement but misunderstood it. "Looking for somebody?" "No," Naomi said. "I came alone." That answer pleased him. It confirmed the story he had already written about her. A solitary black woman in an expensive terminal, carrying a credential he had not bothered to examine, standing where he believed she did not belong. He reached for her identification badge. Naomi held it out without argument. The card was matte black, marked only with her name, photograph, and a silver federal seal. Mercer barely looked at it before turning toward Emily Walsh, the airline employee behind the counter. "Probably fake." Emily frowned. "Sir, the system was still verifying it. I know what I'm looking at." He tossed the badge onto the table. It landed face down. Naomi watched it slide 3 inches across the steel surface. For a moment, the terminal seemed colder. She could smell burnt coffee, rain on wool coats, and the sharp disinfectant used on the security trays. Then she saw something reflected in the glass wall behind Mercer. A man at the coffee stand was not reading the menu. He was watching her. He checked his watch once, paused, then tapped its face 3 times. Naomi's breathing changed. The signal was subtle, but she had seen it before, 6,000 miles from this terminal, in a room where every harmless gesture had carried a second meaning. Her eyes shifted toward gate 17. Beneath an empty chair sat a black backpack that had not been there moments earlier. Mercer followed her gaze and stepped closer, blocking her view. "Eyes on me." Naomi remained still. "Officer, you need to close that gate." He gave a short laugh. "Now you're giving orders." The men near the coffee stand began walking away. Naomi looked past Mercer as the abandoned backpack settled against the chair leg. A tiny red light blinked once beneath the fabric, disappeared, then blinked again. "This is not about me," she said. "Clear the area." Mercer reached for his radio, but not to call for help. He called for another officer. And across the terminal, 3 members of Naomi's hidden security detail stopped waiting for a signal. Naomi did not move when the second officer approached, but her attention remained fixed on the backpack beneath the empty chair. The red light blinked again, faint as a distant warning, then vanished beneath the shadow of the fabric. Officer Mercer stepped between her and the gate, turning his body into a wall of navy cloth and polished authority. "You are staying right here," he said. Naomi glanced past his shoulder. The men from the coffee stand had disappeared into the crowd. Travelers continued toward gate 17, dragging luggage, checking phones, adjusting coats damp from the rain outside. None of them knew how quickly an ordinary morning could change. "You need to move those people back," Naomi said. Her voice stayed low, controlled. "There is an unattended bag under the 3rd chair from the window." Mercer looked without turning his head fully, as if even acknowledging her warning would give it too much weight. Airport security handles unattended property every day. Then handle it now. The second officer, a younger white man named Tyler Hayes, slowed beside them. His eyes shifted toward the gate, then back to Mercer. Should I call it in? Mercer's expression hardened. No. She is trying to distract us. Naomi felt the cold edge of the inspection table against her fingertips. She had spent the previous evening in a military hospital 2 counties away, sitting beside an agent named Samuel Price, who had taken a serious risk during an overseas evacuation. He had smiled through exhaustion when she placed a small wooden airplane on the table for his son. Naomi had promised she would deliver another one to her own daughter before dinner. That toy was now inside the worn briefcase Mercer had dismissed with a glance, tucked beside sealed federal files and a photograph of her father in his old postal uniform. Her father had taught her that dignity was not something another person could hand to you or take away. Still, standing beneath the terminal lights while strangers watched, she could feel how easily humiliation tried to enter through the smallest opening. Emily Walsh reached for Naomi's identification card and turned it face up. The silver seal caught the light. "Officer Mercer, this credential has a federal verification stripe," she said. "I think we should let the system finish." Mercer took the card from her before the screen could load. "I said I have it handled." Across the terminal, the broad-shouldered man with the newspaper lowered it completely. Daniel Brooks had protected Naomi for 4 years, long enough to recognize the slight tightening in her left hand. It meant danger was confirmed. He touched his wrist, signaling the others to close. Distance without drawing attention. The woman near gate 17 moved toward a family with 2 young children and quietly redirected them toward a different seating area. Another agent positioned himself near the exit corridor. Naomi saw each movement through reflections in the glass, but she gave no visible order. Not yet. She needed to know whether the abandoned backpack was the threat or only a lure. Mercer leaned closer. "You said you came alone." "I did." "Then nobody is coming to fix this for you." Naomi looked directly at him. "This is not something you want fixed after it begins." A boarding announcement sounded overhead, cheerful and mechanical, calling passengers toward gate 17. The line started moving. Tyler Hayes looked at the bag again. "Ryan, we should at least stop boarding." Mercer opened his mouth to answer, but Naomi noticed the zipper on the backpack shift slightly, as if something inside had activated. The red light began blinking faster. She turned toward Emily. "Lock the jet bridge door." Emily hesitated only once before reaching for the control panel. Mercer caught her wrist before she pressed the button. "Do not take orders from her." The terminal air seemed to tighten. Naomi heard the soft hum of ventilation, the rolling thunder beyond the windows, and the quiet click of Daniel Brooks removing the safety cover from his communication device. Then the man who had left the backpack appeared again at the far end of the concourse. He was no longer walking away. He was watching the gate, waiting for something to happen. The man at the far end of the concourse raised his phone, but he was not filming. He held it too still, angled toward gate 17 as if waiting for a signal only he could see. Naomi studied the reflection in the terminal glass and felt the shape of the moment settle into place. The abandoned backpack was not random. The man had left it where the boarding line would grow thickest, then moved far enough away to watch without being noticed. Officer Mercer saw only a tired traveler refusing to obey him. Naomi saw timing, placement, and intent. "Officer Hayes," she said, keeping her voice calm, "move the families away from that seating area." Tyler Hayes looked at Mercer before answering. That single glance revealed everything about how authority worked around them. Mercer had spent 16 years in the terminal, long enough to build a reputation for certainty. He was the officer who never admitted doubt, the one supervisors trusted because he sounded decisive even when he had not checked the facts. Younger officers learned quickly that questioning him could cost them favorable shifts and recommendations. Tyler's hand hovered near his radio. "Ryan, the light on that bag is flashing." Mercer finally turned his head. The backpack looked ordinary from where he stood, black nylon, one strap folded beneath it. "Could be a battery pack," he said. "Could be anything," Naomi replied. "That is why you clear the area first." Mercer faced her again, irritated less by the warning than by the fact that she had delivered it without fear. You keep forgetting who is in charge. Naomi glanced toward the boarding line. An elderly couple had stepped within 10 feet of the chair. A father balanced a sleeping toddler against his shoulder while searching for boarding passes. Emily stood frozen beside the control panel, her fingers inches from the button that would lock the jet bridge. The overhead announcement repeated the boarding group, bright and pleasant, unaware of the tension gathering below it. Authority does not make danger disappear, Naomi said. It only makes you responsible for what happens next. Mercer's face tightened. He had heard challenges before, but not like this. She was not angry. She was not pleading. Her calm made his confidence feel thin, and he responded by reaching for control. Step away from the table and place both hands where I can see them. Naomi did not move immediately. Through the glass reflection, she saw Daniel Brooks touch the side of his watch. The hidden security team shifted again. The woman in the gray sweater guided the family with the toddler toward a gift shop. Another agent moved beside the men with the phone, close enough to intervene without alarming the crowd. Daniel's eyes met Naomi's reflection. He was asking permission. She gave the smallest downward motion. With her fingers. Hold. She still needed the terminal cleared before anyone confronted the watcher. Mercer interpreted her silence as defiance. I will not ask again. Emily looked at Naomi's federal credential lying on the steel table. The verification screen behind her had finally loaded. A gold symbol appeared beside Naomi's name, followed by a restricted access notice. Emily's breath caught. Officer Mercer, you need to see this. He did not turn. Close the screen. But the credential is valid. The words cut through the nearby noise. Tyler looked at Naomi differently now, his uncertainty sharpening into concern. Mercer glanced at the display, saw the federal seal, and dismissed it with a scoff. Valid credentials do not give passengers command authority. Naomi's eyes returned to the backpack. The red light was no longer blinking at random. It flashed in a steady pattern, 3 short pulses followed by 1 long glow. Her stomach tightened. She recognized the sequence from an intelligence briefing 2 weeks earlier. It was not a countdown. It was a connection signal. The device was searching for another transmitter. At the far end of the concourse, the man lowered his phone and slipped his thumb toward the screen. Naomi stepped away from the table. Mercer immediately blocked her path. Do not make this worse. He is about to connect to the bag, she said. Who? Naomi looked past him. The men saw her watching and turned toward the exit corridor. Daniel Brooks began moving. The agents around the terminal followed, quiet and precise, but Mercer reached for Naomi's arm before she could signal them openly. You are staying here. The boarding line continued forward. The bag emitted a soft electronic tone, almost lost beneath the rolling luggage and overhead announcements. Naomi heard it. Emily heard it. Tyler heard it. For the first time, even Mercer's confidence flickered. Then the terminal lights dimmed for half a second, and every member of Naomi's security detail reached for their communication devices at once. The terminal lights returned to full brightness, but the brief dimming had changed the air. Conversations softened. Heads turned. A child stopped rolling a suitcase and stared toward gate 17. Naomi felt Officer Mercer's hand tighten around her arm, not enough to hurt, but enough to remind her that he still believed control belonged to him. Let go, she said quietly. You are interfering with an active threat. Mercer gave a sharp, disbelieving laugh. You are not running anything here. Behind him, Emily looked from the flashing bag to the federal credential on her screen. The gold symbol beside Naomi's name pulsed once, then locked behind a classified access warning. Emily swallowed. Officer Mercer, this is beyond normal clearance. Close it, he said. Now. Tyler Hayes did not move. He was watching the backpack, and this time he saw what Naomi had already understood. The light flashed 3 short pulses, 1 long glow, then repeated. That is a pairing sequence, Naomi said. The device is searching for a remote signal. Mercer turned toward the bag at last. For 1 second, uncertainty crossed his face. Then pride covered it. You do not know that. I know exactly what it is. At the far end of the concourse, the man with the phone lowered his chin and tapped the screen. Daniel Brooks moved immediately. He crossed behind a row of seats with the calm speed of someone who had rehearsed the path before entering the building. The woman in the gray sweater stepped between the boarding line and the abandoned backpack, raising her airline identification as if she belonged there. Another agent reached the jet bridge controls from the opposite side. Still, none of them revealed their purpose. Naomi had ordered distance for a reason. A visible security detail would have turned the terminal into a stage and warned anyone watching that she had recognized the threat. Now that secrecy was collapsing by the second. "Emily," Naomi said, "lock the bridge and stop boarding." Emily reached for the control again. Mercer released Naomi only to block the panel. "Nobody touches anything until Airport Command arrives." "Airport Command is not here," Naomi replied. "The families are." The father holding the sleeping toddler had reached the front of the line. Behind him stood the elderly couple, a college student with headphones, and a woman pushing a stroller. The ordinary details made the danger feel sharper. A pink blanket. A paper coffee cup. A boarding pass folded into quarters. People trusting the uniforms around them to notice what they could not. Naomi stepped around Mercer. He caught her path again. "One more move and I will detain you." She looked directly into his eyes. "Then detain me after you clear the gate." His expression hardened. "You think a badge on a card makes you important." Naomi heard the words, but she did not let them pull her away from the problem. "No. I think those people make this important." Tyler raised his radio. "I am calling it in." Mercer reached for the device, but Tyler stepped back. It was a small movement, almost nothing, yet it broke 16 years of unquestioned authority. "Unattended bag at gate 17, Tyler said into the radio. "Possible electronic activation. Begin a quiet evacuation." The response came through in static. Before anyone could answer, the signal cut out. Every radio on Mercer's belt went silent at once. The overhead boarding announcement stopped in the middle of a sentence. The screens above the gate flickered, lost the flight information, and turned black. A low mechanical click traveled through the terminal as several security doors locked automatically. Travelers looked around in confusion. Mercer stared at his radio and pressed the button again. Nothing. Naomi looked toward Daniel Brooks. He was now only a few feet from the men with the phone. The men noticed him, slipped the device into his coat, and turned toward the exit. "Do not let him leave," Naomi said. Mercer moved in front of her again. "You are done giving orders." Then Daniel removed a black credential from inside his jacket and held it where only the men could see. The watcher froze. Around the terminal, the other plainclothes agents produced matching credentials. The woman in gray took control of the boarding line. The agent near the exit sealed the corridor. Another moved toward the backpack with a compact scanner. Mercer's face changed as the ordinary passengers he had ignored became a coordinated security team. Daniel touched his earpiece and spoke in a voice that carried across the suddenly quiet gate. "Protective detail, initiate terminal containment." Naomi watched Mercer absorb the words. His eyes moved from Daniel to the agents, then finally back to her. For the first time that morning, he looked at Naomi without contempt. He looked at her with fear. Mercer's fear lasted only a second before pride rushed in to hide it. He straightened his shoulders, glanced at the watching passengers, and reached for Naomi's arm again as though one final display of control could erase everything unfolding around him. "You are still being detained," he said. Daniel Brooks was already moving toward them. "Remove your hand." His voice was calm, but every agent in the terminal responded to it. The woman in gray redirected the boarding line toward a secure corridor. The agent near the backpack raised a scanner and signaled for more distance. Tyler Hayes stepped beside Emily, placing himself between the passengers and the gate. Mercer looked from one face to another, searching for someone who still saw him as the authority. "This is an airport police matter," he said. "You cannot take over my terminal." Daniel stopped 3 feet away. "This terminal is now under federal protective control." The words landed harder than a shout. Mercer's radio remained silent. The gate screen stayed black. Even the overhead light seemed colder. Naomi watched the man with the phone standing near the exit corridor, his hands visible, his expression unreadable. 2 agents had closed in around him without causing panic. The danger was contained, but not resolved. She looked back at the abandoned backpack. Its red light continued the same pattern. 3 short flashes. 1 long glow. "Daniel," she said, "the device is still searching." He nodded once. "The technical team is 2 minutes out." "We may not have 2 minutes." Mercer heard her and scoffed, though the sound lacked confidence now. "You expect everyone to believe you understand that device?" Naomi turned toward him. "I expect you to stop wasting time." A few passengers had begun recording. Mercer noticed the phones and made a choice that would follow him long after the terminal reopened. He pulled a restraint from his belt. "Turn around." Emily stared at him. "Officer Mercer, what are you doing?" "Establishing control." "Control of what?" Tyler asked. Mercer ignored them. Naomi could have stepped away. Daniel could have ended it with a single command. Instead, she looked toward the family with the sleeping toddler, now waiting near the secure corridor. The father was frightened but trying not to show it. The little child rested against his shoulder, unaware of the black screens, silent radios, and flashing light beneath the chair. Naomi slowly turned around and placed her hands behind her. The metal closed around one wrist with a cold click. Gasps moved through the crowd. "Naomi," Daniel said, his voice tightening. She met his eyes in the reflection of the glass. "Keep the terminal moving." Mercer secured her other wrist and guided her toward a steel support rail beside the inspection table. "You do not get to command officers because you carry a special card." Naomi felt the restraint press against the skin beneath her father's watch. She kept her breathing even. "The next person you dismiss may not have anyone standing behind them." Mercer attached the restraint to the rail. "Save the speech." A young black boy named Marcus stood 10 feet away beside his mother, clutching a folded paper airplane. He had watched Mercer question Naomi, ignore her warning, and now restrain her while strangers filmed. "Mom," he whispered, "why did he arrest the lady who helped us?" His mother placed a hand on his shoulder but had no answer. Naomi heard him. She lowered herself carefully onto the polished floor so she would not block the evacuation path. The stone was cold through her coat. Above her, the terminal clock marked each second with a soft mechanical pulse. Daniel crouched nearby, anger held behind disciplined eyes. "Give me the word." "No," Naomi said. "Get everyone clear first." The agent scanning the backpack lifted his head. "We have a live connection attempt." Across the concourse, the detained man smiled for the first time. Naomi followed his gaze toward Mercer's radio. A small blue indicator had appeared beneath the dead screen. The backpack answered with a long red glow. Mercer finally noticed it. His face drained of color. Naomi leaned forward as far as the restraint allowed. "Take off your radio," she said. He stood frozen. "Officer, take it off now." Mercer looked down at the blue light on his radio as though it had betrayed him. The indicator pulsed once, then again, matching the long red glow beneath the chair. Naomi remained seated against the steel rail, her wrist secured, her father's watch pressed between cold metal and skin. "Remove it slowly," she said. "Set it on the floor and step back." Mercer did not move. For the first time since he had stopped her, the certainty in his face was gone. Around them, the terminal had fallen into an unnatural quiet. No boarding announcements. No ringing phones. Only the distant roll of thunder beyond the glass and the soft mechanical tick of the clock above gate 17. "Ryan," Tyler Hayes said, "do what she says." Mercer's eyes shifted toward the passengers being guided into the secure corridor. Several still held their phones up, but nobody spoke. Marcus stood beside his mother, gripping the paper airplane against his chest. Naomi saw fear gathering in the boy's face and softened her voice. "Officer Mercer, the radio may be acting as a relay. Take it off without pressing anything." Mercer swallowed. His fingers moved toward the clip, then stopped. "How do you know?" "Because the device is not searching anymore." Naomi looked toward the backpack. It found something. Daniel Brooks stepped closer, careful not to crowd him. Listen to her. Mercer unclipped the radio with stiff hands. The blue light brightened. A faint electronic tone passed through the terminal, almost gentle, like a seatbelt warning inside an empty car. The red glow beneath the backpack answered. Place it down, Naomi said. Do not drop it. He lowered the radio onto the tile. The moment it touched the floor, Daniel guided Mercer back several feet. The agent with the scanner studied the readings. Signal strength is decreasing. Nobody celebrated. The silence remained too fragile. Naomi counted the seconds by the clock. 1, 2, 3. The blue indicator faded, returned. Weakly, then went dark. Beneath the chair, the red light slowed to a single pulse every 5 seconds. The technical agent exhaled. Connection interrupted. Daniel turned toward Naomi, but she shook her head. Not finished. Her wrists ached where the restraint held her to the rail, yet she kept her attention on the bag. In the glass wall, rainwater traveled downward in thin silver lines, bending the reflections of agents, officers, and stranded travelers into wavering shapes. Naomi could smell wet coats and cooling coffee. The cold floor beneath her seemed to pull the heat from her body. Still, she did not ask to be released. The device may reconnect through another signal, she said. Shut down every wireless transmitter within 100 feet. Daniel relayed the order. Agents moved quietly through the area, collecting radios, phones, tablets, and portable scanners. Emily powered down the gate console. Tyler removed his own radio and placed it beside Mercer's. The terminal grew even quieter, stripped of its electronic hum. Marcus took one small step forward before his mother gently held him back. Is she going to be okay? He whispered. Naomi heard him and turned her head. Yes, she said, though she could not know that yet. You stay with your mother. The boy nodded. His paper airplane trembled in his hand. Mercer stood several feet away, staring at Naomi as if seeing the entire morning from the outside for the first time. He looked at the restraint around her wrists, then at the backpack she had warned him about before anyone else noticed. Shame moved across his face slowly, without defense. I did not know, he said. Naomi looked at the rain beyond the windows. You did not try to know. The words were quiet. They carried farther than anger would have. The agent beside the backpack raised one hand. Everyone froze. The red light blinked once, held for 2 long seconds, then disappeared. The silence afterward felt enormous. Daniel waited 5 more seconds before approaching Naomi. We are stable for now. He reached toward the restraint key, but Naomi looked past him at the detained man near the exit corridor. The man was no longer smiling. His gaze had shifted toward the ceiling clock. Naomi followed it. 40 seconds remained before the minute changed. Somewhere above them, hidden inside the ventilation system, a second blue light came on. Naomi lifted her eyes toward the ventilation grill above gate 17. The blue light was no larger than a grain of rice, tucked behind the metal slats where no traveler would ever notice it. Daniel followed her gaze and understood at once. Second transmitter, he said. The technical agent checked the scanner and shook his head. It is outside our shutdown radius. Naomi looked at the terminal clock. 36 seconds remained before the minute changed. The detained man near the exit corridor watched the same clock with quiet satisfaction. The backpack is not the primary device, Naomi said. It is a receiver. The real signal is above us. Daniel turned to his team. Seal the ventilation controls. Cut power to this section. Mercer stood frozen beside the inspection table, his discarded radio dark on the floor. The terminal that had once answered to his voice now moved around him without waiting for permission. Agents closed access doors. Emily guided the final passengers into the secure corridor. Tyler placed himself near Marcus and his mother, speaking softly to keep them calm. Every order came through Naomi, and every trained person in the room listened. Daniel unlocked the restraint from the steel rail. The metal opened with a small click. Red marks circled Naomi's wrists, but she rose without looking at them. 28 seconds, she said. The technical agent pointed toward a maintenance panel nearly 12 feet above the floor. The transmitter is behind that vent, but we cannot reach it before the cycle resets. Naomi looked across the terminal. An airport service cart stood near the dark gate screens, its lift platform folded against the side. Bring that here. Mercer finally found his voice. That equipment is not authorized for passenger areas. Daniel turned toward him. Neither is restraining a protected federal official during an active security operation. Mercer lowered his eyes. The words left him with nothing to defend. 2 agents rolled the service cart beneath the vent. Naomi stepped onto the platform before Daniel could object. You should stay back, he said. The signal pattern came from my briefing, she replied. I know what to disconnect. The platform rose slowly, its motor sounding painfully loud in the silent terminal. Beneath her, the polished floor reflected the white lights, the black uniforms, and the faces turned upward. 15 seconds remained. Naomi reached the grill and found a thin cable running behind it. A blue diode pulsed at the center of a device no larger than a deck of cards. 3 short flashes. 1 long glow. The same pattern as the backpack. It is linked to the terminal network, she called down. If I pull the wrong line, it may search for another source. Daniel looked toward the detained men. Which line? The men said nothing. Naomi studied the wiring. Black, white, and yellow cables disappeared into the ventilation housing. Then she noticed a narrow silver strand wrapped around the yellow lead. It did not belong to the airport system. 10 seconds, the technical agent warned. Naomi closed her fingers around the silver strand. The man near the exit shifted for the first time. His expression changed. That was enough. This one, Naomi said. She disconnected it. The blue light went dark. The terminal clock changed minutes. Nothing happened. No alarms. No flashing screens. Only rain tapping softly against the windows. The agent beside the backpack checked his scanner, waited, then raised his hand. All signals inactive. Air returned to the room in one shared breath. Daniel ordered the technical team forward. Agents secured the transmitter and the backpack while the detained man was escorted away from the gate. Naomi remained on the platform for a moment, one hand resting against the cool metal grill. Below her, Mercer stared upward, his badge catching the hard terminal light. He had mocked a woman he believed was alone. Now the entire terminal stood under the command of the people who had been quietly protecting her from the moment she entered. When the platform lowered, Daniel stepped beside Naomi and spoke clearly enough for Mercer to hear. Dr. Carter, Federal. Command has confirmed full authority. This terminal is yours until the threat is cleared. Naomi looked across the silent concourse. Then she turned to Mercer. Open every gate record from the last 2 hours, she said. And this time, do not ignore what is in front of you. The gate records appeared across 3 restored monitors, rows of timestamps and security images filling the dark screens with cold blue light. Naomi stood beside Emily's counter while Daniel and the technical team reviewed the captured devices. The red marks around Naomi's wrists had deepened, but she kept her sleeves lowered and her attention on the footage. Start 90 minutes before I entered the terminal, she said. Emily opened the archive. Mercer remained several feet away, stripped of command without anyone needing to say it aloud. Tyler had collected his radio and badge for review, and an airport supervisor was already approaching through the secure corridor. Mercer watched Naomi study the screens with the patience he had refused to give her. She did not raise her voice. She did not remind him that she had warned him first. That made his shame harder to escape. On the monitor, the men from the coffee stand entered through a staff access door using a temporary maintenance pass. 8 minutes later, a second figure appeared near the ventilation panel, wearing an airport service jacket and carrying a narrow equipment case. Naomi leaned closer. Freeze it there. Emily stopped the image. The second figure's face was partly hidden beneath a cap, but the badge clipped to the jacket was visible. Mercer's expression changed. That identification belongs to Calvin Ross, he said. He works communications maintenance. Where is he now? Daniel asked. Mercer looked toward the western concourse. Control room B, about 400 feet from here. Daniel gave an order through a secured channel. 2 agents moved immediately. Naomi studied the time stamps again. The first man was a distraction. Ross installed the transmitter and remained inside the airport network to restore the signal if the backpack lost connection. Emily scrolled forward. The footage showed Ross entering control room B. 20 minutes earlier. He had not left. Then one of the monitors flickered. A warning appeared over the ventilation map. Airflow in Gate 17 had begun redirecting toward the western corridor, where evacuated passengers were waiting. He still has access, Naomi said. Daniel looked at the technical agent. Can you shut it down? Not remotely. He has locked us out. Mercer stepped forward. There is a manual cutoff inside the service passage behind Control Room B. Daniel studied him. Can you reach it without crossing the controlled ventilation zone? Mercer nodded, but his face had gone pale. There is a maintenance stairwell from the lower baggage level. Naomi saw fear in him now, not the defensive fear of losing authority, but the clear human fear of being asked to enter the danger he had ignored. Daniel began to assign an agent, but Naomi stopped him. Mercer knows the route. Send Tyler with him. Mercer looked at her, surprised. After what I did, you are trusting me. I am trusting the people waiting in that corridor to matter more than what you did. The answer left the space between them silent. Tyler stepped beside Mercer. Together they moved toward the service stairs while Naomi remained at the monitors, guiding them through the building map. Each turn echoed through Tyler's secured radio. Down 1 level. Past the baggage conveyor. Through a yellow access door. The redirected airflow continued rising. 60%. 70. Naomi watched the numbers and felt the cold memory of the restraint around her wrists. Mercer's breathing came through the radio, fast but controlled. We are at the cutoff panel. There are 2 handles, Naomi said. Close the upper valve first, then the lower one. Slowly. Metal groaned through the connection. The airflow dropped to 40%, then 20%. The warning light disappeared. At that same moment, Daniel's team entered Control Room B and secured Calvin Ross without alarming the passengers nearby. A few seconds later, Mercer and Tyler returned through the service door. Dust marked Mercer's uniform, and his hands trembled slightly. He stopped in front of Naomi. You could have let someone else go. Yes, she said. But you knew the way. He looked down at her wrists. I judged you before I knew anything about you. Naomi's eyes remained steady. You knew I was a person. That should have been enough. Mercer removed his badge and placed it on the counter before the arriving supervisor could ask. Naomi did not smile. She turned back to the monitors and checked the western corridor. Families were being released from the secure area. Marcus and his mother appeared among them, safe beneath the returning terminal lights. Only then did Naomi allow herself one slow breath. The terminal reopened in stages, first the western corridor, then the security lanes, then Gate 17. The black screens returned to flight schedules, the overhead speakers resumed their calm announcements, and travelers began moving again with the cautious relief of people who had come close to danger without fully seeing its shape. Naomi stood near the window while Daniel finished speaking with Federal Command. Outside, rainwater streaked across the glass, and a pale band of sunlight pressed through the clouds above the runway. The backpack and transmitter had been removed. Calvin Ross and the men from the coffee stand were in federal custody. The investigation had already expanded beyond the airport, and every access record from the morning had been secured. The threat was over. The lesson was not. Officer Mercer waited beside the inspection counter with his badge still resting on the steel surface. An airport supervisor stood across from him, documenting the restraint, the ignored warnings, and the decision to dismiss Naomi's verified credential. Mercer did not argue. He did not ask for another chance. When the supervisor told him he was suspended pending a full review, he nodded once and removed the radio from his belt. The same radio he had trusted more than Naomi now lay silent beside the badge. Before leaving, he approached her slowly. Daniel watched from a few feet away but did not interfere. Mercer stopped at a respectful distance. Dr. Carter, he said, I cannot undo what happened. Naomi looked at him. Without the badge and radio, he seemed smaller, not because he had lost authority, but because he could no longer hide behind it. "No," she said. "You cannot." His eyes dropped toward the red marks around her wrists. "I told myself I was protecting the terminal." "You were protecting your assumptions." Mercer accepted the words without defense. "I am sorry." Naomi remained quiet for a moment. Around them, suitcases rolled over tile, coffee machines hissed, and a boarding agent welcomed passengers as though the morning had returned to normal. Then Naomi said, "An apology matters when it changes what you do next. Make sure the next person does not need a federal team before you decide they deserve respect." Mercer looked at her, nodded, and walked away beside the supervisor. No one applauded. Naomi did not want applause. She wanted the people who had watched to remember what silence had allowed. Marcus appeared near the gate with his mother, still holding the folded paper airplane. He approached Naomi carefully. "Were you really alone?" he asked. Naomi smiled and crouched so they were eye level. "I chose to walk alone," she said. "That is not the same as having no one." She opened her worn briefcase and removed the small wooden airplane she had meant to bring home to her daughter. She turned it over in her hand, then gave it to Marcus. "Keep this one until you build something better." His face brightened. "What should I build?" Naomi looked toward the runway, where a plane was rising through the last of the rain. "Something that carries people farther than fear does." Marcus held the wooden plane carefully against his chest. His mother thanked Naomi, and together they joined the boarding line. Daniel stepped beside her. "Your daughter will ask where her gift went." "I will tell her the truth," Naomi said. "Someone needed it today." When her flight was called, Naomi picked up the same briefcase Mercer had dismissed hours earlier. She walked toward the jet bridge beneath warm returning light, her security team several steps behind her, visible now but no longer necessary to prove who she was. On the counter, Mercer's badge remained under the terminal lights, beside the handcuffs that had been entered into evidence. The objects were quiet. So was justice. But everyone who had witnessed the morning understood the difference between authority and character. One can be issued by an institution. The other is revealed by how a person treats someone they believe has no power. Naomi disappeared into the jet bridge without looking back. The rain stopped. The runway shone like polished glass. And somewhere in the terminal, a young boy lifted a wooden airplane toward the light. So what would you have done if you had been standing there when Naomi was judged before anyone knew who she was?